the issue that we have with him is that there are aspects of his behavior that suggest he's quite aggressive. He can be quite unkind. He's not really worried about the additional responsibilities that I think come with people as they accrue power. And he's not the only one who is often dismissive of their responsibilities as they get power. You know, one can argue that we've seen that with the Facebook executives as well.
Noch ein Podcast auf der DLD. Ich habe das große Glück, einen internationalen, wichtigen Kopf aus der Disruption-Szene sozusagen zu treffen. Deswegen wechseln wir jetzt aufs Englische. So, yeah, thanks for finding the time. Maybe you a quick introduction to yourself.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Frank. I'm a regular visitor to Munich for DLD, which I love. It's in my calendar every year. I've been in the tech industry since I left university, the early 90s, first as a journalist, then as an entrepreneur. And for the last 6 or 7 years, after I sold my last company, I have been thinking a lot about why there are so many radically changing disruptive technologies coming all at the same time, some of which you, of course, know really, really well. Computation, renewable electricity, lithium-ion batteries, things that are happening with the gene. And through that work, I started to come up with a thesis about the world, which I called the Exponential View. This idea that we're going through a transition into a new industrial era that I call the exponential age. You'll see a commonality in the names. And last year I published a book called Exponential, just published in Germany a month or so ago, that explains why this is happening and what the impact is on businesses and on governments and on our daily lives.
So Azeem, you're a really expert. So the Exponential View, read your newsletter, highly recommended, great newsletter. The Exponential View newsletter and also the book. And we have a common view on many things, like we're now coming into an exponential age where things really take off, where all this, I call it the toolbox of the future, or however you want to call it. Right. Everything comes together and we will see crazy things. But maybe we start with your background. You just talked about your company that you sold. What did you do there and how did you sell it?
You know, it was 2007, 2008 during the global financial crisis. And I was helping somebody with their portfolio. So they said, look, you're a smart person, kind of help me out with this, because it was a difficult time. And I spent a lot of time there. And as I was trying to make sense of the world, I started to realize that a lot of smart people were saying things on blogs and on Twitter that would show up as real bits of news or analysis 6 months or a year later. And so I started to think, how do I access these smarts, this intelligence? And Twitter was just starting to take off. So I built a company to identify who was authentic, trustworthy, authoritative on different topics on Twitter.
So you read automatically what he was posting, then put it through an AI or algorithms. It was algorithms, and then you say, okay, he or she is trustworthy, and okay.
Yeah, and you know, so it's very similar to the PageRank algorithm that's used in Google. Yeah. Lots of pages point to your page is trustworthy. Now we did it. Google does much more than that. We did a bit more than that. And
only on Twitter.
Well, so initially it was started on Twitter, and then we brought in Facebook and LinkedIn and Quora and blogs and other things, and we used that also to start to verify whether a Twitter account was a real account or a bot account. Back in 2010, 2011, we were doing this. And
they can still use it today. You could use it today.
It'd be very helpful today. And what's interesting, I mean, you know this as an entrepreneur, is that initial product was very, very, very powerful, but nobody in 2011 was willing to pay for a data layer across Twitter to give that insight, that information. And so we pivoted the company and we said, well, when is it useful? For who is it useful to know whether Frank is an expert in entrepreneurship, And so we built a company that took the same technology as a marketing analytics tool. So if you're a brand manager and you wanted to know who to reach, we could answer that question. And that company raised a few $1 million of venture capital. We won some awards, we had some big customers, and then we were acquired at the end of 2014 by a business called Brandwatch, which is a British business, has an office in Berlin and in Stuttgart as well, as it happens. But yeah, that was a really interesting time.
Right, great. So when and how then did it make click in your brain that we're going into this era of exponential development, and that this is really, really important to solve problems, but also this will bring a lot of change? When was the moment where you said, okay?
Yeah, well, I tell you what the moment was. So I've had a computer since 1981, since I was 8 years old, and of course I've been familiar with Moore's law and the doubling of processors on a chip every couple of years since I was a child. And you know, I'd been familiar with that exponential curve. But when I sold the company for the first time in 7 years, I could think about something other than the company and my team. And it took 6 months of space, and I started to read more and more. And in order to give myself the discipline of continuing to read, I started to write about what I was reading in a weekly newsletter.
Okay, great. That's it.
And after that, I started to see the pattern, and I started to see, wait, solar panels are dropping in price the way silicon chips were. Wright's law. Genome sequencing is dropping in price even faster. And seeing all of these things, I saw the commonalities, and I tried to then understand, why do these things all drop in price in this way? And it wasn't until I think a year and a half of thinking about it that I felt confident to say, this is a new regime of the economy, a new configuration, right?
For me, I was building all those many companies and was investing and so on. And then I went on a TV show. And after this, I wrote a book about where would technology go? And I didn't have a goal. I was just like, okay, now take a little break and write a book. And that was exactly kind of the same situation. I was writing just about, okay, this will happen, and this will happen, and that will happen. I said, holy shit.
It's all happening.
If this all is true,
yeah.
And then I reread and said, okay, it can happen. And then I came back to my team and I said, okay, we have to shift, and we have to only invest into deep tech, and we have to make sure that Europe is not falling behind. Right. So we have the same view about that this is now happening or will happen very soon. And my question is, as you're based in the UK, how do you feel about Europe in this? Are we really falling behind? Do you got a lot of politicians, investors who say, hey, great, I read your book, I will put all my money into this, and all the politicians are very excited? Or do you say, holy shit, they don't get it, and that's a huge problem?
Well, it's a combination, right? Because the world is a broad church. So let me start with my really honest assessment, and then maybe we can talk about what we can do about it. Yeah. So I think the things that you need to take advantage of the exponential age are you need markets. In other words, places where you can sell your technology. You need the talent, the scientific talent. You need the scaling talent, the commercial people who can come in, and you need capital that can fund your way through the cycle. And you also need a sense of creativity and dynamism and optimism about the future. Now, I think unfortunately on every one of those axes, the US scores more strongly. It has a younger population, which makes it more optimistic in some sense. It has the best universities with deep track records that are connected to
and deep pockets,
funding sources, right?
But also from the universities, they have a lot of money, but also the other funding sources.
And the universities are very open-minded about how they support their scientists. Yeah. And then you have this huge market. Now, Europe...
And they adapt much faster. You see that, for example, on Palantir, which is a company I really like.
Yeah.
And when you see the adoption in the US, they're much more progressive in adopting the new data platform than in Germany, for example. It will just take more time. So they're not as... Yeah.
Well, the Americans are much more, have historically been so much more happy to adopt technology as consumers and as businesses than Europeans have been for a very, very long time. So I think the story in Europe is that while the conditions are much better than when you and I started in entrepreneurship 25 years ago, right? It was much worse then. Structurally, there are these disadvantages. And the thing that I'm concerned with is that, you know, talent begets talent. What makes DLD so successful within Munich is that all the smart people come, that brings more smart people. That's what happens in other places. And so you have to be able to build deep, strong enough clusters of talent that force the talent, encourage the talent to stay there. Otherwise, it will start to move. And I'm concerned that that structural disadvantage in Europe will continue. Now, I said we'll talk about some solutions. So I think some things that are really positive is that a lot of deep tech is connected to industry. And particularly in Germany, there is a deep, deep heritage, for very good reasons, in industrial expertise from academia through to operators. And I don't know if you see that, but I think that that is a distinct advantage. And Germany is just big enough a market to foster that.
We see that at Lilium Aviation, where I'm an investor, and yeah, we benefit a lot from the ecosystem of the car manufacturers that in this production. Absolutely, I believe that's even better in the valley. But the challenge is about the capital. So who in Europe is willing to say, okay, oh great, you're building a flying car. Oh great, you're building fusion energy. Oh great, right, you want to heal cancer. So what is your view on this? Because yes, some things, and even in biology and so on, we have some great universities, we have some great talent, we have some knowledge, but the capital is missing.
Yeah. So I mean, let me give you the positive case, and then we'll get really realistic about it. So Eni, which is the Italian energy company, is an investor in Commonwealth Fusion, a fusion company in Boston, Massachusetts. Yeah. Iberdrola in Spain has made a huge transition towards renewables over the last several years and has really reinvented itself. You're starting to see now the big German car companies essentially become electric vehicle companies, which means they're 1/3 software, 1/3 lithium-ion batteries, and 1/3 traditional car. So you can see those transitions slowly starting to happen, and if the belief sets in, you could unleash that. But the reality, unfortunately, Frank, as you know, is that risk capital exists in you know, more and more of it exists in the US. And let's think about
China.
And China. But let's think about this risk capital that is venture capital. If you look at globally, the average, the rough assets under management of all asset classes that is in venture capital is somewhere between 0.5% and 1%. Okay, it's probably closer to 0.5%. If you go to the US and you look at the very top performing university endowments or family foundations, their allocation to venture capital is between 10 and 15%. And the allocators who are underweight, in other words, below the 0.5% average, tend to be in Europe. And so fundamentally, the family foundations, the family offices, and the pension funds, whether it's for regulatory reasons or other reasons, is less willing to invest in the future. And that comes back to this question of optimism, right? Why is that? Why is it that you look at the future, you look at the science, you look at the improvements in material science, you look at the improvements in protein engineering, you look at the potential of quantum computing, you look at the climate crisis coming down on us, and you look at this and you say, well, I think I'm going to invest in
a hotel.
In a hotel.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that until one of the key things that we have to do is unlock the capital. I think we can unlock the capital partly because corporate balance sheets are strong and companies can have an opportunity to reinvent themselves. But partly we have to, you are effective at doing this, and other people are effective at doing this, just keep telling the story and start to persuade those with the capital to take more risk. Now, of course, the tech turndown last year and the fact that crypto has turned out to be, have a lot of bad actors in it, will scare people off. And you can argue, well, crypto is very different to flying cars, is very different to monoclonal antibodies. But if you're a non-specialist expert, it all looks like amazing technology, and there's a fire in the amazing technology shop. I don't want to go there. So I'm a little bit. I think that we have a lot of work to do still now to turn that around. But if we could turn it around, I think it would be remarkable.
Fully agree. The reallocation of capital is quite important, and that's how the Silicon Valley also is thriving, because there is so much capital. And a German friend of mine called Klaus Hommels with Lakestar.
Of course, yeah.
He's doing a very, very good job telling the story, explaining it to so many politicians and so on. And he's a very good friend, and we try together. I mean, he's so much stronger than me and then better connections, but we try, and it's so hard to get it across and say we need to invest now, because otherwise the future will not be in Europe. So that's the same thing that you experience. What are you trying? Like, are you talking to politicians in the UK? Are you talking to rich families? What is your...
I do two things. I think one thing is through my writing and my other communication, I try to make the opportunity one of pragmatic optimism. So we can't predict exactly when this will happen, but we know it will happen, and we should be optimistic about its possibilities. I think that's important. And the second thing is that I do try to influence where I can, whether it is through politicians or, after this trip to Munich, I go to Davos for the World Economic Forum, and I'm presenting a few times, and one of them is one of my sessions is on my horizon scan, and I will be talking a lot about the roadblocks to this opportunity. It's quite often when people talk about technology, for example, and the technology risks, they're saying, oh, AI is going to take all the jobs. Yeah. My view of the AI risk, or the electrification risk, or the deep tech risk is we won't get to it quickly enough. Right? Yeah. So I'm going to try to reframe that discussion of risk in that way. I'm going to try to reframe the role of government in facilitating the creation of these markets. And I think we've talked a lot about Silicon Valley and how things are good there, but one thing we should recognize that Silicon Valley has been very poor at accepting is it's been very poor at accepting the role of government as a final arbiter in the state, in the system, for creating the correct environment and public goods and incentives that enable innovation. And we've had 50 years where the state has been rolled back because of supply side thinking, and Milton Friedman, Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher. But the state has an absolutely critical role, a number of critical roles, in catalyzing innovation and the innovation economy. And I call that role it will take on over the next years catalytic government. If we think back to Singapore and Lee Kuan Yew, the founder of modern Singapore, what he did was he constructed incentives and guidance and direction for Singapore to become what it is now, a thriving, dynamic, advanced economy without the resources of people or the resources of things in the ground. And it is a dynamic space. And I think there is a role for government in this picture, which is to say simple things. We want markets created in these areas, and we'll create incentives to do that. We want research, we want the public goods that support that, like education, research, and training. We want to provide incentives, because new technologies are expensive until we learn how to make them cheaper. Rights law, as you said earlier. So we as the government will be the buyer of expensive technologies so that they will be cheap for you to buy in years to come. And this idea of catalytic government, I think, is really important. And Silicon Valley hasn't made peace with the reality that government was absolutely critical for creating the conditions for the valley to exist, to grow, and to thrive.
Let's talk about a tricky thing. An icon, again out of the US, Elon Musk.
Oh, Elon Musk. You mean Loki from, you know?
So I believe undoubtedly he is the mastermind in technology and disruption. I mean, he's building rockets that fly and land again. He's building satellites that work, cars that self-drive, and so on. I don't need to tell you, and brains and OpenAI, very deep involvement. But you're also critical of him when I read your latest.
Yeah.
So what's your view on this person?
Well, I mean, I don't. So I've not been in a room with Elon Musk for more than 20 years.
But you met him 20 years ago?
PayPal days.
Oh, wow,
yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So long time. Yeah. And I was in the room. We were at it was just a big party, and he was in the room. And Peter Thiel was there, and Peter Thiel was beating my friend at chess.
Okay.
And so on. So you know, I've never exchanged more than a couple of words of anything, the hello, you know, passing wave. But you know, I think he's an incredibly dynamic, capable, powerful, entrepreneurial engineer, leader, able to activate these systems. And it is you know, the city guides. Before that, it was PayPal, and now this sequence of companies he's worked on. I think the issue that we have with him is that there are aspects of his behavior that suggest he's quite aggressive. Can be quite unkind. He's not really worried about the additional responsibilities that I think come with people as they accrue power. And he's not the only one who is often dismissive of their responsibilities as they get power. You know, one can argue that we've seen that with the Facebook executives as well. I think the other challenge with Musk is that he presents an unobtainable model of achievement. What I mean by that is Musk, like Steve Jobs, is unique, right? You can't, as a 15-year-old, say, I'm going to go and behave like him, in the same way as you can't go off and say, I'll run as fast as Usain Bolt, right?
Yeah.
So you've been a dragon on the German Dragon's Den, and you don't want to hear people are going to be like Elon Musk. I mean, Elon Musk is going to be 1 in 2 billion. And so that is not the right model of entrepreneurship. The model of entrepreneurship, there are many of them, and people need to be able to find their different versions of them.
Let's dive into this.
Yeah.
So you said he's aggressive.
Yeah.
Why and when and how is he aggressive?
So I think, for example, when the issue around Starlink and the Starlink bills were sort of emerging, right? He is through Starlink, which has provided a huge support infrastructure for the Ukraine armed forces in their very, very honourable fight against this violent totalitarian dictator. Starlink is an essential part of that. And how
combined with Palantir. Yeah.
I didn't know Palantir was involved.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a big combination. Starlink and Palantir.
Interesting. But you know, so once you're providing this absolute vital lifeline, I think you have to provide some degree of consistency. You can't shitpost to people on Twitter. It constructs the wrong type of message.
Totally agree. I mean,
35 million people are fighting for their lives.
Totally agree. And I believe he's a bad communicator. But what happened is that the U.S. government didn't want to pay. He paid it out of his own pockets, and super badly communicated. But he did deliver, and they were struggling with the payment.
But he did sell $20 billion worth of Tesla stock this year, right? So there are other places to, and this is what there are other places to vent your anger than on Twitter, right? And that I think was my point about the responsibilities that accrue to people as they get more and more successful, right? You know this that the world today lives in this world of sort of quite extreme outcomes. So the very powerful are so much more powerful than the powerful, who are much more powerful than the averagely powerful.
Absolutely.
And so as Spider-Man was taught.
With great power comes great responsibility. It's a very important sentence.
It's a very important sentence. And the aggression that I refer to, I was searching for the right word in English, which I was struggling to, even though it's my first language, is that he's not exhibiting that responsibility with his power. And I think it's really important to do that right now. You know, we need leaders more than we need magicians at this moment, with the world turning into recession, with today at DLD, the phenomenal economist and commentator Martin Wolf talked about the threat to democracy.
Yep.
And he's got this new book out on this. You know, we are at a pivotal moment where there could be bad outcomes, and that requires people to behave well.
Agree, and definitely it can be better in this thing. But I believe he has no bad intention, and he's a good person.
I don't know him well enough, right? So that's the thing. Maybe.
So also, when I talk to him personally, I don't do this often, but he's a very kind and very open guy. Second thing is, not everybody can become an Elon Musk.
Right.
Absolutely, but we need, at least I believe, we need heroes that are running that fast, playing that perfectly golf, or building rockets like this, so that we can look up to them and try in our own sphere to get as close as possible, maybe even do other things. But I believe that's a good thing. Even if not, nobody can become Elon Musk, but he shows this, and he changed my life a lot, because I see people like him and say, Frank, you're so stupid, you're so slow, you need higher ambitions. Of course, I will never achieve what he did, but it helps me, like, hey, why the hell can't we not build a great rocket in Europe? Hey, why the hell can't we not build great satellites?
You might be achieving other things, Frank, though, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, you might be achieving stable personal space in your life, consideration and emotional support for the people who are around you. These are qualities that are all very important to being a human, right? It's not just about
his family life and everything is a freaking disaster, and that so yeah, and I believe you have to make a separation between, is he a good leader? I believe yes. Is he a good communicator? I believe no.
Yeah.
Is he a good symbol icon, like, hey, we all can achieve so much more if we try hard? I believe yes.
So I think on that last point, right, I think you are, as long as the Hall of Fame is not just Elon Musk and Steve Jobs, right, as long as the Hall of Fame has lots of other types of people achieving in different ways that are dynamic or important, I can agree with that. But I think you also raise a really difficult and challenging question, which is about, roughly speaking, how much assholery are we willing to put up with for broad social outcomes? And so, for example, if you believe, as I do, that Musk is probably the most important person in the story of speeding up the adoption of electric vehicles, which I think is critically important, then at some point I have to be very utilitarian about this and say, thank God for Elon Musk. However, we're going to face lots and lots of questions like this in the coming 20 years as we try to figure out the balance between adaptation and mitigation towards climate change. And I'll give you an example. So one example is that roughly more than half of the critical minerals that are required for lithium-ion batteries and other types of battery chemistries and advanced electronics and so on live on what are known as indigenous lands. Whether it's in, these are the lands of the first peoples who lived in countries that have been colonized, nations that have been colonized. So in indigenous lands in the US or in South America or in Australia. And largely speaking, because most of those peoples have faced genocides over the past 200 or 300 years, in recent decades there have been laws protecting those lands and giving them more stewardship rights over them.
That's great.
It's great, except that in order to potentially achieve decarbonization of our entire industrial system and economy, we need those minerals out of the ground really quickly. I'll say another word to you, unobtainium. right, from the James Cameron film Avatar,
Yeah.
right? So now, the reason I raise this is because how much assholery are we willing to put up with in extracting those critical minerals at the speed at which they're required in order to tackle climate change for the whole of humanity at the cost of any individual group? I think it's a really hard question, and that one that requires really, really deep, thoughtful, consensual, broad-based discussion, thinking, and communication. It also has to happen quickly because we don't have time. And I think that the Elon Musk situation is a great example of one narrow part of that very, very difficult question,
Yeah.
which is, are we willing to throw away norms, values, hurt in order to achieve electric vehicles much more quickly?
Very, very good and complicated.
Right? I don't have the answer. I can only ask the question.
My answer is Vulcan Energy. It's a company where we invested in. They're getting lithium without any CO2 emissions in Germany in big amounts out of the ground. Lifecycle, a company.
Oh yeah, they're great. Yeah.
Lifecycle, you know them, and so on. So we invested in several companies that have different answers. Are they enough? Maybe not. Yeah. And then I believe Tesla's also mining now.
They're starting to. But, you know, I want to also challenge this idea about what kind of leader do you need to have. And I said to you, listen, if there are lots of different models of what leaders look like, yeah. Dozens maybe, that sounds great. I also do wonder about whether, now that people understand that these difficult, deep companies can be built, yeah. more people who might be better communicators, they might be more balanced individuals, will step up to lead. And that would create the sort of competitive ecosystem that would give us at an ecosystem level the results. Perfect. Without needing to rely on really difficult individuals.
My problem is, name me 3 individuals out of Europe doing brilliant things in helping climate change, in creating great new medicine or whatever. 3 individuals in Europe.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think you probably have 3 names in your portfolio, and this is a trick question. But you know, I think that there are a few good examples that I will come up with. So I was quite impressed with the boss and founder of Terra Quantum, which is a Swiss-German quantum company. Now the story there is that I read about Terra Quantum a couple of years ago, and I read that the founder was an investment banker, and I thought to myself, wait a second, so this guy has seen quantum's going to be big, he's going to easily raise money, and he's going to hire all the academics and then sell the company as a talent acquisition. And I met him, I think his first name is Marcus, yesterday, and my assumption about was so wrong. He's a really deeply thoughtful and impressive character, really just expert about his field. He actually had a training as a quantum physicist. So I wouldn't have given you this answer 24 hours ago, but I spent a bit of time talking to him yesterday, and I spent some time reading about what he has done, and I came away going, okay, I feel quite optimistic about that one company. So I've given you one. But
that's a challenge. I don't know him. I heard of him a little bit, but I don't know him. So we have to be better in Europe so that everybody knows him. Like Mate Rimac, he's building great electric cars. In
Croatia.
Yeah. Nobody knows him. Nobody knows him.
He is a smart guy. I was at dinner with him a few months ago.
He's a good guy.
He's really young. He's like 28 or 29.
Totally.
So he's impressive. The other few people, I'll just throw some names out as we go. So I've actually forgotten the name of this company, but they made a biotech company down in Exeter, which is Britain's 15th biggest town, and they sold for $750 million last year with no venture capital.
Oh, okay.
So again, we don't necessarily know of the successes because of the paths they're taken. They are there. We don't tend to. One of the reasons we don't tend to celebrate them is because a lot of our successes are not in the consumer business, B2C type products, like which Tesla is, or Facebook and so on, nor are they necessarily in the kind of accessible enterprise business. Because everyone can name Mark Benioff from Salesforce, or not everyone, but a lot of people can, right? But can people, there are other amazing enterprise companies like Snowflake, which has a German founder, I think, in the data lake business, but people,
Shopify, Toby, but he's only a German guy, but he's
in Canada, right? But actually, people don't really know Toby Tobias at Shopify, right? Not in the way they know, say, Benioff or these consumer businesses. So we also have to find a better way, and certainly this is true in the UK, about talking about the positive social impact of business in the world, even if the business is kind of nerdy and in the plumbing and far away from something that we hold in our hands. I often think about Mark Carney and how he talks about finance. So he was a governor of the Bank of England, and he does a lot of work in climate change. And you know, one of the things that happens when he talks about finance is he talks about it from its social function, right? The purpose of finance is actually a sort of a mechanism of reducing friction in the economy. For our benefit. And it's funny to say, like, bankers have this useful social function without which we would feel the pain. And we felt that pain after the global financial crisis because bankers were not able to bank, credit locked up, small businesses were not able to get loans. Now, bankers may have created the problem in the first place, but we noticed what happened when we didn't have them.
All right.
A bit like It's a Wonderful Life, the film.
That was great. I have one last question. Which kind of blog, book, newsletter, beside the great Exponential View, so recommend here again, are you recommending for people to read to get deeper into the exponential developments we're seeing?
Oh, that's a really...
Or maybe other topic, sorry, or maybe other topic?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. And I'm going to give two answers, one which is more mainstream and one which is more narrow. So I'll tell you what, on the mainstream side, I think that Bloomberg, which is a business publication, financial publication, has got a fantastic team that is covering the topics like electrification, electric vehicles, robotics, AI, and also climate change. Okay. Really, really great coverage. I rely on them a great deal. And sorry, they have a newsletter, or is it just Bloomberg.com? If you go to Bloomberg.com, they have a whole series of newsletters. Okay. Climate change, electric vehicles, AI, and so on. Bloomberg.com. Bloomberg.com is a brilliant one. And the second is a Substack, which I really enjoy. I don't know who writes it. It's called Clement on Investing. Clement. So the guy's first name or his surname is Clement, and he writes 2 or 3 times a week, and he goes and looks at a piece of recent financial research, either academic or from a bank, and he explains it in this really accessible way. I think he only has a few hundred subscribers to his blog, but this will change now. I read it pretty regularly. Clement on Investing. Clement on Investing. All right, this was great. A lot of fun. Thanks for all your work. Quite important. It was also influential to me. Your newsletter, and hoping to catch up anytime soon again. So thanks. Thank you so much, Frank. Appreciate it. Thank you.